I have always believed that a man remembers the exact moment his life begins to split into two, before and after. For me, that moment came 7 days before my wedding. At the time, I didn't know it. I was floating in that warm, blind kind of joy that only love can give. A sweetness so thick it settles on your tongue and makes you believe the world itself is smiling back at you. My name is Kamal. 43 years old. Self-made. Built my real estate empire from the ground up in Lagos, brick by brick, mistake by mistake, prayer by prayer. People know me as a billionaire now, but those who grew up with me remember the dusty-footed boy who sold pure water at Ojuelegba bus stop to buy his first school uniform. Money changed everything except the way my heart longed for a family, a partner, a sense of belonging that felt deeper than the numbers in my accounts. And for the first time in my adult life, I believed I had finally found that in Aminra. She was sunshine. Not the harsh Lagos afternoon sun, no, she was the soft, quiet kind of light that wakes you gently in the morning. A librarian who loved children's books, soft music, and long walks. She was 28 but carried a calm wisdom that humbled me. When she smiled, her eyes curved like she was holding a private joy inside. I always felt honored to be the man she chose to share that joy with. Our wedding was set for the following Saturday, 7 days away, and the entire city felt like it was preparing with me. My mother was in full celebration mode. My older sister, Miriam, had practically moved into my home just to make sure I don't forget anything, though I suspected she simply wanted to enjoy the pre-wedding festivities. The men in my family celebrated quietly, proudly, with shoulder pats and brief nods. The women? They were dancing like I had won a national award. I couldn't really blame them. They had prayed for this for years. They had watched me survive heartbreaks, endure betrayals, and bury work colleagues who didn't make it to 40. They had seen me pour all my strength into business but none into my own happiness. And now, finally, that happiness felt right in front of me. That evening, I sat at my dining table, staring at the gold-trimmed invitation cards. I ran my thumb over the embossed letters. Kamal and Aminra. October 7th. Union of hearts and families. I couldn't help smiling. Guy, this wedding goes sweet. Oh, my best friend Tun said over the phone. I hope you're ready to cry small. You 2-day form hard man. I won't cry, I said, though I knew I was lying. But I'm ready. He laughed loudly. That's what all grooms say until they see their bride walking down the aisle. I ended the call and leaned back in my chair, letting the soft jazz from the sound system fill the room. Everything felt perfect. Planned. Aligned. Even blessed. But life has a way of slipping shadows behind joy. It began with a simple, harmless thought. Let me surprise Aminra tonight. Just a short visit. Just to bring her the gold anklet I bought earlier in the day, the one she had admired in a magazine weeks ago but never asked me to buy. I wanted her to know she was seen. Thought of. At 8 p.m. I grabbed my car keys and stepped out. The drive to her apartment in Lekki Phase 1 was smooth. The night breeze coming off the lagoon felt cool against my face through the half-open window. I imagined her expression when she saw the anklet. I imagined kissing her forehead the way she liked. I imagined sitting on her small balcony, talking about our future, our home, our children. Yes, everything felt perfect. When I arrived, her gate man, Baba Ao, saw my headlights and opened the gate instantly. He knew me well. Oga Kamal, welcome sir, he greeted. How you day, Baba? I replied. I day fine, sir. Madam no tell me say you day come but you fit go up. Thank you. I parked and stepped out quietly. That was when I noticed the first sign, very small, almost nothing. Her living room lights were off. Usually at this time she would be reading or watching a movie but the windows looked dark. I assumed she was in the bedroom or still in the shower. After all, surprises only work when the person isn't expecting you. I climbed the stairs and used my spare key, not to enter but to unlock the outer gate quietly. I always knocked after that. But this evening, just as I raised my hand to tap gently on the door, I heard something that made me freeze mid-air. Her voice. Soft. Almost trembling. Aminra, I whispered unconsciously, my hand still suspended. Her voice came again. She was on a call. I didn't want to eavesdrop. That wasn't my nature. But something in her tone sent a cold trickle down my spine. I'm scared, she said. Scared? About what? The wedding? I stepped back from the door. No, you don't understand, she continued. Her voice sounded emotional, distressed even. 7 days left, and everything is coming too fast. A tightness gripped my chest. Was she getting cold feet? Was this normal pre-wedding fear? I leaned closer, unable to stop myself. A long silence followed, then her soft sigh. I know what I promised you, she whispered. I know. But I didn't expect him to be this good to me. My heart stopped. Promised who? Expected what? The silence inside the apartment grew heavy. Then she continued, voice trembling with something I couldn't yet define. I didn't plan to fall for him. That wasn't part of the agreement. Agreement? My stomach flipped upside down. I felt like I had been punched in the ribs. That word, agreement, echoed again and again inside my skull. I stepped back, my breath short, my mind spinning. No. There had to be an explanation. Maybe she was practicing lines for something. Maybe she was helping a friend rehearse a play. Maybe. Her next sentence shattered all those weak hopes. Yes, she said quietly. I'm going to marry him, but you know it's not because of love. The world tilted. My ears rang so loud I almost missed the next part. You and I agreed. After the wedding, I would do what we planned. I staggered back until my shoulders hit the wall. The gold anklet slipped from my fingers and fell, silent on the tiled floor. My fiancée, the woman I loved, was making promises to someone else. And whatever this agreement was, it was about our marriage. I pressed my hand over my mouth, fighting the rising nausea, the disbelief, the sting of betrayal beginning to form inside me. Inside the room, she whispered one last line. I just pray he never finds out. My heart cracked. Fully. Without mercy. I stepped away from the door slowly, stiffly, moving like a man learning how to walk after an accident. I didn't understand what I had heard, only that it had pierced straight through the center of my joy. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, a shadow moved behind her curtain. A man-shaped shadow. My blood ran cold. Someone else was inside with her. I stumbled back, gripping the stair rail for balance, my heart beating so loudly it drowned everything else. That was when the truth hit me. I wasn't just hearing betrayal. I was seeing it. I took one final step down, just one, before the shadow moved closer to the window, clear enough for me to see it wasn't a random silhouette. It was someone I recognized. Someone I trusted. My breath left my chest. My legs shook. My entire world began to crumble. I wasn't just losing the woman I loved. I was losing my faith in everything I believed about loyalty. And in that moment, with the Lagos night stretching cold around me, I realized something terrifying. 7 days before my wedding, my real nightmare was just beginning. For a long moment I couldn't move. My hands stayed glued to the staircase rail as if letting go would send me crashing down. The silhouette behind Aminra's curtain shifted again. Broad shoulders, tall frame, unmistakable posture. My mind ran through 1,000 names, 1,000 possibilities, praying it wasn't who I feared it might be. But God did not grant me that mercy. As he stepped away from the window, the faint light from her bedside lamp caught the side of his face, and my vision blurred with disbelief. Tund. My best friend. My brother in everything but blood. The man who toasted to me last week saying, "Nobody deserves happiness like you do, Kamal." The man who hugged me and promised to stand by me as my best man. The man who knew how many heartbreaks I'd survived, and always told me I deserved better. That same man was in my fiancée's bedroom, at night, in the dark, while she cried into a phone about some agreement they both clearly understood. My stomach knotted so fiercely I thought I would vomit right there on the staircase. The phone in my pocket vibrated, jerking me back into my body, but I was too shaken to even check it. Inside the apartment, I heard footsteps, then the mattress creaked. A voice, Tun's voice, spoke low and casual. "You're overthinking this, Aminra. Calm down." I clenched my jaw so hard a sharp pain shot through my temples. So they were comfortable enough for him to talk to her like that? Comfortable enough to sit, to lie, to share a private room? My pulse pounded like drums in my ears. I leaned slightly closer, just enough to hear. "You knew what this was from the beginning," Tun said. "You can't suddenly change the rules because he treated you nicely." My heart dropped into a black, hollow place. Aminra sniffed. "I know, but he's not what I expected." "He's a good man, Tund." "Good man." The praise felt like a knife shoved between my ribs. I wanted to burst into the apartment, to confront them both, to demand answers, but something held me back. Fear. Humiliation. All of them blended into a cold, strangling grip on my throat. "You think I don't know he's a good man?" Tun said sharply. "That's exactly why this will work. Kamal trusts too easily. Always has. He sees the best in people, especially you." I closed my eyes, fighting the sting behind my eyelids. So this wasn't accidental? They planned this. An agreement. Between my best friend and my future wife. But what kind of agreement involved marrying me? Money? Revenge? Some twisted scheme for business? None of it made sense, and that made the pain worse. Aminra's voice dropped to a whisper. I didn't think I'd start feeling guilty. Guilty doesn't change anything, Tund said. We need this, Aminra. We've come too far to back out now. We need this. They weren't just involved, they were partners in something bigger. Something directed at me. My legs trembled under me. I gripped the rail tighter, my breath uneven. What if he finds out? She asked quietly. What if someone tells him? Tund scoffed. Kamal? Tell him what? That the girl he worships was supposed to? His voice dropped suddenly. Too soft for me to hear the ending of that sentence. But I heard the tone. Light. Mocking. Cruel. I swallowed hard, bile rising in my throat. My fingers went numb. This wasn't just an affair, it wasn't just a betrayal, it was a plan. A coordinated plan built around my wedding. Maybe my money. Maybe my company. Maybe my downfall. Whatever it was, I was the fool in the middle of it. I felt something burning behind my ribs, a mixture of rage, pain, disbelief. I wanted to storm inside and drag Tund out by the collar. But another part of me, the rational businessman, whispered, if you move now, you will never learn the full truth. And I needed the truth. Because this betrayal wasn't accidental. It was intentional. Their voices dropped lower, too low for me to hear again. I stepped back slowly, silently, until I was far enough from the door. The night wind brushed against my face, cold and sharp, grounding me. I felt hollow. Cold. Almost dead inside. A car drove past on the street below, headlights flashing across the building, and for a moment I felt like the universe itself was mocking me, shining light on a darkness I never expected. I had never felt so alone. Not even when I slept on the floor at 16. Not even when I buried my father. Not even when I made my first million and realized I had no one to share it with. This was worse. This was betrayal from two people I had placed at the center of my life. My phone vibrated again, and this time I forced myself to look. It was a message from Tund. Tund. Bro, you reach house. Want make I stop by? Need advice on something. I stared at the message. He was texting me, from inside my fiancée's apartment. My fingers shook so violently I nearly dropped the phone. He was playing both sides. Smiling at me, while lying beside her. 20 years of friendship suddenly felt like a joke. I put the phone back in my pocket, stepped carefully down the stairs, and nodded at the gate man as I exited. He opened the gate without question. Oga Kamal, good night, sir. I managed a stiff nod. Good night. I walked to my car in a daze, my vision blurring again. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time, staring at the steering wheel, breathing slowly to keep from breaking down. My entire chest hurt. My heartbeat felt wrong, too fast, too loud, too painful. After a while I finally started the engine. Not to go home, I couldn't bear the emptiness waiting for me. Not to confront Tund or Aminra, I wasn't stable enough for that. I just drove. Aimlessly. Past the calm lagoon. Past the quiet streets. Past the city lights that blurred into streaks of gold and blue. Somewhere between Victoria Island and Ikoyi, tears finally spilled down my face. Hot, angry, helpless tears. I wiped them quickly, ashamed even though no one was watching. I hated feeling weak. I hated feeling broken. I hated feeling played. And worst of all, I hated that I still loved her. My phone rang again. This time it was my mother. Mama, I whispered, my voice cracking. My son, she said cheerfully. I'm just calling to pray with you before I sleep. A knife twisted in my chest. She had no idea her son's world was falling apart. I swallowed hard. Mama. I'm fine. She hummed. You don't sound fine. I forced a smile she couldn't see. Just tired. Wedding stress, she said, laughing. Don't worry. By this time next week you'll be dancing with your wife. Her wife. Her daughter-in-law. The one I chose. The one I trusted. The one plotting with my best friend. I squeezed my eyes shut, letting my mother's voice wash over me like warm water trying to soothe a wound too deep to touch. After the call, I parked by the edge of the bridge overlooking the water. I watched the reflection of city lights trembling on the surface. I needed answers. I needed clarity. I needed to know exactly what I was facing. Because whatever plan Aminra and Tund had, I was now part of it without my consent. I remembered the words. After the wedding, I would do what we planned. After the wedding. Not before. So the betrayal wasn't complete yet. It was waiting. Dependable. Scheduled. A slow poison. I took a deep breath and wiped my face. There were two choices. Confront them emotionally. Investigate silently. If I confronted them now, they would deny everything. What? pretend, flip the story, manipulate my heart. But if I investigated quietly, I could find the truth, the whole truth, every hidden angle, and then decide. At the right time, a cold clarity settled inside me, cutting through the pain like a blade. Yes, I would investigate, not out of revenge, but for survival. Because this wasn't just about heartbreak, it was about betrayal with purpose. And I needed to know why. As I pulled away from the waterfront and headed home, a single thought echoed louder than all others. If they thought Kamal was an easy man to deceive, they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. But even as I whispered that to myself, something darker curled in the pit of my stomach. Something told me that whatever I thought I knew, I had no idea how deep this betrayal was going to cut. The following morning, Lagos felt the same, hot, bright, humming with life, but I didn't feel it. I walked into my office, my tailored suit pressed and perfect, but my mind was fractured, replaying the scene at Aminra's apartment over and over. Every syllable she had whispered, every laugh or sigh I had caught, clung to me like a shadow I couldn't shake. I sat at my mahogany desk, looking at the city outside, thinking about the wedding in 7 days. My office should have felt like a sanctuary. Instead, it was a cage. Papers, contracts, and spreadsheets, things that usually filled me with pride, now felt like meaningless noise. Tun's text from the previous night had still been unanswered. I hadn't replied, and I had no intention of doing so until I understood everything. He had betrayed my trust, my friendship, and now the woman I loved, or so I thought. "Morning, sir," said Chica, my assistant, knocking lightly before entering. "Everything ready for the board meeting?" I nodded mechanically. "Yes, thank you." She hesitated. You don't look well." I forced a smile. "Just wedding stress, Chica. Nothing serious." She gave me a long, assessing look, then left. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that this was just pre-wedding anxiety, but the truth gnawed at me relentlessly. Aminra had lied. Or at the very least, withheld information that mattered. And the fact that Tund, my closest friend, my confidant, was involved made the wound worse. The problem was I couldn't confront anyone yet. Not Aminra. Not Tund. Not even my family. If I did, I would lose the advantage of knowing the truth. And right now, I needed answers. I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. I spent the morning reviewing contracts, but I barely read a word. My mind kept drifting back to her voice. The softness, the hesitation, the way she said, "we," when talking about something secret. That simple word had the weight of betrayal pressing down on me like a stone. By mid-afternoon, I decided I needed to see someone I could trust beyond Tund. Someone discreet, someone who could quietly check things out without alerting Aminra or anyone else. I called Baba Akin, an old friend who had helped me in business matters before, legally and unofficially. "Baba Akin," I said, "I need your help." Discreetly. He chuckled. "Kamal, you never ask for help unless it's serious." "What's wrong?" "I need to know things about someone I thought I could trust. Family matters, personal matters. Nothing illegal. But I need clarity. Evidence." He didn't hesitate. "I understand. Send me the details. Don't worry. Discretion guaranteed." I hung up, feeling slightly more in control. It was a small comfort, but a comfort nonetheless. That evening, I drove past Aminra's apartment. I told myself it was coincidence, concern, nothing more, but when I saw her through the dimly lit window, laughing lightly with a friend I didn't recognize, something in my chest clenched. I didn't stop the car. I didn't honk. I just watched and wondered. For the first time, I questioned everything I thought I knew about love, about trust, about loyalty. At home, my mother called. She had no idea. Every time she mentioned the wedding, my stomach twisted. She spoke excitedly about the flowers, the seating, the caterers. She assumed I was happy. And in a way, I wanted to let her believe it. She deserved joy. I wasn't ready to break her heart yet, so I smiled. I nodded. I agreed. All the while, my mind worked like a machine, calculating, observing, questioning. That night, I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the distant hum of traffic outside. Aminra's voice, Tun's tone, the words, "we need this," and "after the wedding," all replayed in my mind. I realized for the first time that I didn't fully know the woman I loved. I didn't fully know my best friend. I made a vow to myself, I would find the truth. Before the wedding. Before everything else. But even as I promised myself this, I could feel the tension growing in my chest. My plan required patience, observation, strategy, and I was terrified I might misstep. I knew one thing with absolute certainty. If I discovered that Aminra had truly betrayed me, my life would never be the same. The next morning, I met Baba Akin at a quiet cafe in Victoria Island. We sat in a corner, far from the prying eyes of waiters or passers-by. "I want you to check everything," I said. "Bank transfers, messages, anything that might tell me what's going on. And I want to know about anyone connected to her that I might not know about, associates, friends, colleagues. I need the truth, no matter how painful." Baba Akin nodded. "Understood. I'll start immediately. You'll have updates, discreet and direct." I exhaled slowly. Finally, action. Finally, a step toward clarity. But even as I felt a flicker of control, a small part of me wondered, what if the truth is worse than anything I can imagine? For the rest of the day, I tried to maintain appearances. I spoke to staff, attended meetings, even smiled at my assistant Chica when she commented on the pressure of wedding preparations. But inside, I was elsewhere, thinking, calculating, worrying. I began reviewing old messages, emails, and photographs with Aminra. I looked for patterns, inconsistencies, anything that could explain her cryptic words from the night before. Nothing concrete appeared, yet my unease deepened. Something about her tone, the way she said "we." I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more than I could see. The night came again, quiet, heavy, and suffocating. I walked to my balcony, overlooking the city lights of Lagos. They twinkled innocently, unaware of the storm brewing in my life. I pulled out my phone and stared at Tun's unread messages. I didn't respond. Not yet. He had betrayed my trust in ways I wasn't ready to process. Every time I imagined confronting him, the rage in me rose like wildfire. Yet there was a deeper emotion, something quieter, more insidious. A sense of loss. Of betrayal not just by a partner or friend, but by the life I had carefully built around love and trust. Somewhere, in the middle of the night, I realized that the countdown to my wedding wasn't just ticking against the calendar. It was ticking against my heart. And for the first time, I felt genuinely afraid of what those 7 days could bring. I didn't sleep that night. I barely closed my eyes. My mind wandered from Aminra to Tund, to the wedding, to my family. Every scenario ended with the same bitter truth. I was walking into something I didn't fully understand. When dawn finally broke, painting the Lagos skyline in streaks of gold and gray, I felt more resolved than ever. I would discover the truth. Every detail. Every secret. Every hidden plan. Because if I didn't, if I let the wedding happen blind, I would lose everything that mattered. And I couldn't afford to lose Kamal, not now, not ever. That afternoon, my investigator called. His first words chilled me to the bone. "Sir, you need to see this for yourself. What I found, it's worse than you imagined." The call from Baba Akin's associate came just after noon. I was sitting in my office, staring at the city through the floor-to-ceiling windows, trying to convince myself that maybe, just maybe, my mind had played tricks on me. That perhaps Aminra's words had been misinterpreted. That Tun's presence in her apartment had been completely innocent. But the sharp, low voice of the investigator destroyed any fragile hope I had left. "Sir, you need to see this for yourself," he said. "What I've found, it's worse than you imagined." I leaned forward, gripping the edge of my desk. "Explain," I said, though I feared the answer. He hesitated, then spoke slowly, deliberately. "I've gone through financials, messages, correspondence, even social connections. Aminra and Tund have been coordinating something. Not just small talk or innocent friendship. It's systematic." My stomach sank. Every instinct in me screamed that this was the moment I had been dreading. What kind of systematic?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Sir, it appears to be a plan surrounding your marriage," he said. "Payments, arrangements, communications with other individuals were still tracking. It's as if everything, every step, has been calculated." I couldn't breathe. I put my head in my hands. 7 days to the wedding. 7 days. And everything I thought I knew, everything I had built my life around, might be a lie. "Send me the documents," I said finally, my voice stronger than I felt. "I need to see everything myself." Within the hour, a secure file appeared on my tablet. I opened it, and what I saw froze me. Bank transfers. Amounts in 6 figures, flowing between accounts linked to Aminra, Tund, and a few unknown individuals. Emails outlining meetings, instructions, and what looked like schedules for key events leading up to the wedding. Text messages referencing my trust, my family, my wealth, all written in a casual, almost mocking tone. I felt like the floor had fallen away beneath me. A message caught my eye, a conversation between Aminra and one of the unknown individuals. It was dated a month ago. "He doesn't suspect a thing. 7 days before the wedding will be perfect." After that, everything falls into place. My hands shook. I had to sit down. I had to breathe. But my chest felt tight as if someone had locked it in a vice. I knew then that my worst fears weren't paranoia. They weren't misunderstandings. They were reality. I sat in silence for a long time, reading every message, reviewing every transaction. The picture that emerged was clear. Aminra and Tund were partners in a scheme. What kind of scheme I didn't yet know. But it was deliberate, personal, calculated. And I had been blind. I put the tablet down and ran my hands over my face. I remembered her voice. The softness. The whispered "we" in her phone call. Every moment of laughter, every gentle smile. It was all a mask. A mask she had perfected. I felt rage rise inside me, hot and wild. I wanted to call Tund. I wanted to storm into Aminra's apartment. I wanted to demand answers. I wanted to destroy everything around me, to make them feel even a fraction of what I felt. But another part of me, calm, rational, precise, whispered, patience, strategy. Observe. Understand. Then act. Because if I made a mistake now, if I let anger control me, I could ruin everything and still not get the truth I needed. I decided to meet Baba Akin's associate in person. If there were more details, more hidden communications, I needed to see them. I needed to hold them, understand the breadth of this betrayal. We met in a quiet lounge, far from the prying eyes of colleagues and the public. The investigator laid out the documents, spreadsheets, screenshots of messages, and a few photographs, innocuous at first glance but damning under scrutiny. Aminra and Tund had been meeting regularly, late nights, sometimes in hotels, sometimes at her apartment. There were notes about conversations, about timing, about keeping appearances, and following the plan. "Sir," the investigator said gently, "it's not just a personal betrayal. This is organized. There may be other people involved beyond what we've identified. We're still investigating." I felt my jaw tighten. Every instinct screamed that I needed to confront Aminra immediately. But I knew that confronting her now could backfire. If there were other people involved, if this went deeper than even I could imagine, I needed leverage. I needed proof that was undeniable. I left the lounge in a haze, driving slowly through the streets of Lagos. Every familiar landmark now looked strange, alien. The city seemed indifferent to my pain. People walked by, laughing, talking, living normal lives, while my world crumbled quietly inside a private chamber of betrayal. At home, I avoided my mother and sister, retreating to my study. I needed space to think, to breathe, to plan. I sat down and began writing notes. Not to accuse, not to confront, but to map the truth. Every transaction, every message, every meeting, every lie. And then I noticed something subtle but terrifying. A pattern. Aminra and Tund's communications weren't random. They followed a calendar, perfectly synchronized with wedding preparations. Invitations, flower arrangements, seating charts, catering schedules. Every accidental detail seemed designed to serve their plan. My heart pounded. Every memory, every smile, every kind word from Aminra suddenly carried a new weight. I realized that everything in our last 6 months together might have been staged, calculated, performed. I felt cold. The investigator called again that evening. "Sir, I found more. Audio messages, some conversations recorded. You should hear them yourself. They'll clarify certain ambiguities." I agreed to meet him the next morning. I couldn't sleep that night, not because of fear but because of anticipation. I needed to hear it. Needed to know how deep the deception went. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about my upcoming wedding. 7 days. Only 7 days remained. If I acted too soon, I risked everything without knowing the full truth. If I waited, I risked watching the person I loved, the person I trusted most, walk down the aisle under a mask of deceit. I realized in the quiet of my room that this wasn't just about betrayal. This was about survival, emotional, mental, and perhaps even social. And I would not be the man who let this destroy him. The next morning, I met the investigator at another discreet location. He handed me a set of audio files, each one a recording of conversations between Aminra and her co-conspirators. I pressed play. Hearing her voice, calm, calculated, discussing arrangements, timing, and contingencies, made my stomach turn. Every word she had spoken to me, every tender moment, every whispered promise, all of it felt tainted. The investigator watched me carefully. "Sir, I suggest you listen to all of them before making any decisions. And remember, the wedding is imminent. Timing is critical." I nodded silently, my hands trembling as I held the player. One message in particular stood out. "Aminra, he trusts me completely. If we time it right, he'll never suspect until it's too late. I froze. My hands shook. My heart thudded so loudly I was certain anyone nearby could hear it. A wave of nausea hit me. And then the final thought, unbidden and terrifying. I don't know if I can ever trust her again. As I sat there, processing the recordings, a new message arrived on my phone. It was from an unknown number, but the tone of the text made my blood run cold. Kamal, you don't know the half of it. Meet me tonight if you want the truth. The morning sun was harsh that day, and Lagos felt unbearably loud, as if the city itself were mocking me. I sat in my office staring at the skyline, but I couldn't focus on work. The audio recordings, the messages, the spreadsheets, all of it ran like a dark film in my mind. And now the unknown text from last night burned like acid on my phone screen. Kamal, you don't know the half of it. Meet me tonight if you want the truth. I had no idea who it was. No idea if it was a trap. But I also knew that if I ignored it, I might never get the clarity I needed. 7 days. 7 days until the wedding. I ran my hands through my hair and thought about Aminra. About the woman I had loved so completely. The one I had imagined walking down the aisle toward me, glowing in white, eyes shining with honesty and love. The woman whose voice had betrayed me a week ago. And yet, I still loved her. It was maddening. I forced myself to get through the day. Meetings, phone calls, reviewing contracts. Everything was a blur. Chica noticed my distraction and asked if I wanted to postpone a lunch with a client, but I waved her off. I couldn't stop. I had to keep appearances. I had to stay in control. But every time my mind wandered, it returned to Aminra, to Tund, to the conspiracy that seemed to wrap around my wedding like a noose. By evening I decided to go. I couldn't wait any longer. I needed the truth from whoever had sent that message. I told Chica I had a late meeting and I left without explaining. The rendezvous point was in a quiet part of Victoria Island, an abandoned cafe that had long been shuttered. My heart pounded with anticipation and fear as I walked up to the dimly lit entrance. Over here, a low voice said from the shadows. I turned and saw a man step forward, tall, lean, face obscured by a scarf and the hood of his jacket. You're Kamal? The man asked. I am, I said cautiously. Who are you? Someone who knows more than you think, he replied. His tone was calm but carried an edge that made my chest tighten. I have information about Aminra. About Tund. About everything. I swallowed hard. Then tell me. He nodded, then handed me a folder. Thick, bulging, heavy. I opened it carefully. Inside were photographs, more messages, bank documents, and names I didn't recognize. This, he said, is everything we've been able to find so far. They're more organized than you can imagine. And it isn't just about money. There's something bigger. I stared at the folder, unable to speak. My hands shook. The betrayal was deeper than I had imagined. He leaned closer. I advise caution, Kamal. If you confront them now, you might provoke them. You need strategy. Timing is everything. And you need to be prepared for the truth. It will hurt. I nodded slowly. I'm prepared. But was I? I drove home that night with the folder on my lap, keeping my eyes on the road but barely seeing it. My mind raced with possibilities. Every memory with Aminra, every conversation, every touch now seemed layered with deception. I couldn't stop thinking about the wedding. Guests were arriving in less than a week. My mother was tirelessly coordinating decorations and traditions. My sister had been planning events and rehearsals. They had no idea what I now knew. They trusted her. They trusted Tund. They trusted me to be happy. And yet, I was anything but. I spent hours that night going through the folder. It was painstaking. The photographs showed meetings, secret exchanges, and even moments that suggested Tund and Aminra were sharing more than just casual confidences. The messages revealed plans, careful arrangements, and contingency strategies. I felt my blood boil. My mind screamed for confrontation, for justice, for answers. But the rational part of me, the part that had built an empire from nothing, kept whispering, patience, strategy, observe, understand. I began mapping everything out, creating timelines, cross-referencing dates, trying to see the pattern. The more I examined, the more disturbing it became. This was not a simple act of betrayal. This was a meticulous plan. And I was caught in the middle. The following morning, I could barely focus on anything. At the office, I made sure all meetings were scheduled, but my mind was elsewhere. I kept thinking about Aminra's laugh, her gentle hands, the way she spoke when she thought no one was listening. And now, every detail was tainted. Every gesture suspicious. By afternoon, I received another call from the unknown informant. Kamal, meet me tomorrow. There's more. Something you must see before the wedding. I hesitated. Where? Same place. Come alone. Be careful. They know you're looking. My heart raced. They knew. Already. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. They were always one step ahead, always calculating. Every move I made, every thought I had, seemed to be anticipated. The wedding preparations went on around me, oblivious to the storm raging inside my head. My mother called to ask about the flower arrangements. I smiled, nodded, and assured her everything was perfect. My sister asked about the guest seating and I gave her all the right answers. Every lie felt like a stone in my chest. I kept thinking about the 7 days remaining. 7 days to plan. 7 days to prepare. 7 days to figure out the full extent of this betrayal. And as the sun set over Lagos, painting the sky in deep oranges and purples, I realized something terrifying. The truth, when it came, could destroy everything. Not just my marriage. Not just my trust. But my very sense of self. I was about to cross a line I could never uncross. That night I could barely sleep. Every creak of the house, every distant car horn, every rustle of the trees outside felt like a warning. My thoughts were consumed with Aminra and Tund, with strategy and evidence, with betrayal and heartbreak. And then I thought of the unknown informant's words. They know you're looking. I understood that my next steps would be dangerous. That every move I made could change the outcome. That I had entered a game I didn't fully understand. I was not just a groom anymore. I was a player. And the stakes were higher than anything I had ever faced. 7 days. That was all I had left. 7 days to uncover the truth. 7 days to decide whether my marriage could survive it, or whether everything I loved would crumble before my eyes. And as I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, I realized that by the time the wedding day arrived, nothing would ever be the same. The next morning, I received a video file from the unknown informant. My hands shook as I opened it, and the first image on the screen made me gasp aloud. Aminra, with someone I never expected. The video file waited on my tablet like a ticking bomb. I stared at the thumbnail, my chest tightening so much it felt like my ribs were crushing together. I knew, before even pressing play, that my life was about to fracture further. I hesitated. Every rational fiber of me screamed to stop, to throw the tablet away, to pretend I hadn't received it. But I couldn't. Not anymore. Not after all that had already happened. I needed to see. I had to see. With trembling hands I tapped the screen. The first frame froze me. Aminra. Sitting across from a man I didn't recognize. His presence wasn't threatening in the ordinary sense. He was calm, composed, but the way they interacted was intimate, too intimate for my mind to process calmly. The casual brushing of hands, the lingering looks, the quiet laughter, everything that had once seemed innocent now carried a weight I couldn't ignore. I pressed play. They spoke in hushed tones, careful to avoid being overheard, but the camera angle, hidden, strategic, captured every expression. The man was giving her instructions, precise and methodical. Aminra listened carefully, occasionally nodding, occasionally jotting down notes. Every gesture, every inflection, screamed that this wasn't a casual meeting. This was planning. And then he said something that made my blood run cold. Make sure he doesn't suspect anything. The wedding is the final step. Once it happens, everything falls into place. I dropped the tablet. My hands trembled violently. My heart pounded so hard I was certain it would break through my chest. Final step? Everything falls into place? The words echoed in my mind, looping endlessly, each repetition a hammer striking the coffin of my trust. I sank into my chair, feeling a wave of nausea. I had known betrayal in business. I had faced rivals who lied, cheated, and undermined me. But this was personal. This was intimate. This was the person I had loved with everything I had, orchestrating a plan with someone I considered my brother. I remembered the investigator's words. It's not just a personal betrayal. This is organized. There may be other people involved. I had underestimated the depth of it. I spent the rest of the afternoon watching the video repeatedly, analyzing every movement, every gesture, every subtle exchange. And as I watched, a horrible realization settled over me. Aminra had been planning this long before I had even known. Months of smiles, kindness, promises, they were all part of a strategy. A strategy designed to use me, manipulate me, and, God help me, betray me. I felt an icy rage rise inside me, but it was accompanied by something else, fear. If this was just the surface, what lay beneath? What other people were involved? What other parts of my life had been mapped and infiltrated without my knowledge? My phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. Meet me at the pier. Midnight. Come alone. You need to see the rest. I stared at it, my fingers hovering over the screen. Midnight. Alone. Dangerous. And yet, I had no choice. I drove to the pier, the streets of Lagos strangely quiet at that hour. The usual chaos of the city seemed like a distant memory, replaced by an eerie silence that matched the storm raging inside me. Every turn, every shadow, every passing figure felt like a threat. When I arrived, a figure stepped out of the darkness. Same scarf, same hooded jacket. "Sir," the man said, holding a USB drive. "This contains the rest. Everything you need to know about Aminra's past, Tun's involvement, and what they've planned for you. But once you see this, there's no going back." I took the drive with shaking hands, my mind a whirlwind of dread and anticipation. I returned home immediately, locking every door behind me, shutting out the world and inserting the drive into my laptop. The files were extensive. More videos, documents, screenshots, and emails. I barely knew where to begin, so I started with a folder labeled Wedding Plan, Confidential. As I opened it, I was confronted with a pattern that made my stomach twist. Schedules for meetings, financial transfers, instructions for interactions with guests, even detailed notes about my family, how they could be influenced, manipulated, or distracted during the wedding week. And then I saw it, correspondence about me. My routines, my habits, my personality traits. The people I trusted. Every detail meticulously recorded. Every weakness identified. It was chilling. They had studied me. They had studied us, Aminra and me, like specimens in a lab. And now I understood why nothing in our relationship had felt entirely real. It hadn't been real. I came across a document labeled Phase 2, Wedding Execution. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were names, dates, and instructions. Every action Aminra would take, every person who would play a role in her plan, every contingency if I suspected anything, they had thought of it all. And the final page contained a note. Step 3. Kamal's trust must remain intact until the final day. Emotional manipulation is key. Ensure compliance without suspicion. I pressed my palms to my face, rocking slightly. Rage, sorrow, and disbelief collided inside me. How could someone I loved with my entire being orchestrate such cruelty? How could Tund, my best friend, participate in this? I realized something then. This wasn't just about betrayal. This was about control. About power. About removing me from the equation emotionally and strategically. I needed answers. I needed confrontation. I needed truth. But I also needed patience. If I acted recklessly, I could lose the advantage. I had to wait for the right moment to expose them, to confront them, to reclaim what they had stolen from me. The night stretched long and heavy. I didn't sleep. I paced my apartment, replaying memories, analyzing the files, planning my next moves. Every detail mattered. Every observation could make the difference between uncovering the full truth and walking blindly into further betrayal. I thought about the upcoming days. Each one would be a test of my patience, my strategy, my ability to maintain appearances while secretly navigating a minefield of lies. And then the thought that chilled me more than any revelation before it. What if the betrayal was not just emotional or financial? What if Aminra had been planning something that would hurt me in ways I couldn't even imagine? The idea made my hands shake. My heart raced. And yet, amidst the fear, a cold clarity formed. I would not be the victim of this deception. I would uncover every secret. I would expose every lie. And when the time came, Aminra, Tund, and anyone else involved would face the consequences of underestimating Kamal. But even as I made this vow, I knew that the clock was ticking. 7 days. 7 days to the wedding. 7 days to uncover the full scope of the betrayal. 7 days to decide whether I could forgive, or whether everything I thought I loved would be lost forever. As I stared at the screen, a final video began to play on its own. My blood ran cold. Aminra, standing in a room I had never seen, holding a document with my name on it and smiling at the camera. Kamal, by the time you see this, it will be too late. Sleep had abandoned me entirely. Every time my eyes closed, the video replayed itself. The cruel smile, the document with my name, the words that chilled me to the bone. Kamal, by the time you see this, it will be too late. I couldn't shake the image from my mind. I felt trapped, suffocated, and furious all at once. I paced my apartment like a predator circling a cage. 7 days to the wedding, and I had uncovered betrayal that ran deeper than I had ever imagined. Yet, for all the evidence, I still had no complete understanding of their intentions. Was it money? Power? Revenge? Or something far more dangerous? The rational part of me, the businessman who had built an empire from scratch, whispered that I couldn't act impulsively. I had to plan, observe, gather proof strong enough to expose both of them without giving them the chance to manipulate the situation further. I opened my laptop again, reviewing every document, video, and message the informant had provided. Each piece fit together like a dark puzzle. Aminra and Tund were not acting alone. There were others, shadowed figures, whispered names, contacts in my business network. They had mapped my life, my habits, even my weaknesses with meticulous precision. I felt a cold fury rise in me. They had underestimated me. They had assumed that Kamal, trusting and loyal, would be blind to their machinations. I wasn't blind. Not anymore. I began making a list. Each person, each communication, every subtle link in their chain. Then I called Baba Akin. Baba, I said, voice steady but intense, I need more surveillance. Everywhere. I want every movement, every transaction, every communication involving Aminra, Tund, and their associates. And I need it discreet. No one can know I'm investigating. Baba Akin didn't hesitate. Understood, Kamal. I'll get a team on it immediately. But be careful. This is more complicated than you think. I know, I said, my jaw tight. But I'm not letting them destroy me. Not this time. By the next morning, I had already begun subtle surveillance on Aminra. I couldn't confront her yet, not until I had the full picture. But I could observe. I could gather every interaction, every message, every hint that revealed the truth. It was painful. Every smile she gave, every gentle word, every touch I observed from a distance felt like a dagger in my chest. I hated it and yet I needed it. Tun was even worse. My best friend, my confidant, my brother in everything but blood. I had trusted him with every secret, every ambition, every fear. And now he was the mastermind behind a betrayal that threatened to shatter my life completely. I began mapping every interaction between them, cross-referencing dates, times, locations, and financial records. Patterns emerged, each one more damning than the last. Meetings at odd hours, coded messages, financial transfers disguised as legitimate business expenses, all pointing to a coordinated plan with me at the center, completely unaware. I spent that night reviewing the surveillance data and evidence. The pieces formed a horrifying narrative. Aminra had been planning this for months, using Tund as her partner. Their plan wasn't random, it was carefully orchestrated to keep me unaware, to maintain my trust, and to exploit my vulnerabilities. And yet, I realized that there was a critical flaw. Their overconfidence. They assumed I would remain passive, that I would trust them unconditionally. They had never accounted for my ability to see patterns, to think strategically, to act decisively when cornered. The following day I devised my plan. I would not confront them blindly. I would bait them, expose them, and reclaim control. The wedding was approaching and every move had to be calculated. I began preparing contingency strategies, from financial safeguards to personal security, ensuring that no one could harm me or manipulate me without consequences. I also had to protect my family. They had no idea of the deceit surrounding them. My mother, my sister, everyone involved in the wedding had to remain safe, oblivious to the storm about to strike. That evening I received another message from the unknown informant. Tonight. Same location. There's more you must see. Be ready, Kamal. They are watching. I nodded to myself. They were watching, yes, but I was watching too. I had learned that the hunter could become the hunted if they underestimated their prey. By midnight I arrived at the pier. The shadows were long and deep, the water reflecting the dim light in a way that seemed almost conspiratorial. The informant stepped from the darkness, holding another USB drive. This, he said, contains information that will clarify everything. Aminra's previous connections, her true motives, and Tun's exact role in the plan. But beware, what you find may change everything you thought you knew about her. I took the drive, my hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. I returned home, locked the doors, and inserted it into my laptop. The first files were even more shocking. Aminra had financial connections I hadn't known about, transactions and accounts I'd never seen, and correspondence with individuals who had no reason to contact her, unless it was part of the plan. There were detailed notes about me, my routines, my vulnerabilities, and even predictions about my emotional reactions. And then I found it, a folder labeled Phase 3, Wedding Day Execution. Inside were schedules, contingencies, and plans for ensuring that I would remain unaware until it was too late. Every element of my wedding, every interaction, every moment had been accounted for. They had plotted my trust, my reactions, and my emotions with a precision that left me shaking. I felt a surge of anger so intense I thought I might collapse. And yet, beneath the rage, a cold, calculating part of me began to emerge. The Kamal who had built empires, who had faced rivals and betrayal before, who knew that the only way to win was with patience, observation, and strategy. I knew I couldn't let my emotions dictate my actions. Not yet. The wedding was approaching, and every move I made had to be precise. Every detail mattered. I began creating a counterplan, how to expose them, how to protect myself and my family, and how to ensure that the full scope of their betrayal was revealed publicly and indisputably. Hours passed as I plotted every scenario, mapping out every possible reaction from Aminra, Tund, and anyone else involved. By dawn, I had a clear strategy, a mental map of the confrontation that would come, but I also knew it would not be easy. They were clever, manipulative, and well-prepared. As the sun rose over Lagos, I felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and focus. The betrayal had shaken me to my core, but it had also sharpened me. Every lie, every deception, every hidden motive had been catalogued, understood, and now weaponized, not to destroy but to protect myself and reclaim control. I looked at the calendar. 7 days until the wedding. 6 to uncover more truths. 5 to prepare. 4 to execute the plan. 3 to confront the betrayal. 2 to expose the lies. 1 to face Aminra. 1 to face Aminra. And in the quiet of my apartment, staring at the city below, I realized one thing with absolute clarity. I would not be the victim of this deception. I would not be broken. I would not be humiliated. Kamal would survive. Kamal would prevail. And when the time came, Aminra and Tund would discover, too late, that betrayal had a price. Later that night, as I reviewed the files one last time, my phone buzzed with a new message. This one was different. It wasn't a warning, an invitation, or a hint. It was a video. Aminra, smiling, holding a ring, and a note addressed to me. By the wedding day, Kamal, you'll have to choose, trust me or lose everything. The day began like any other, but I knew it wasn't. The sun rose over Lagos, bright and indifferent, and the city carried on as if oblivious to the storm consuming my life. I, however, could not pretend. Each step I took, each interaction was weighed and measured. The wedding was only 3 days away, and every second now mattered. I reviewed the files again, mapping every meeting, every message, every financial transaction. The web they had spun around me was vast and intricate, but I had begun to see the threads. Every detail fit into place, each clue pointing to Aminra's and Tund's intent. It was no longer just about money or manipulation, it was personal. They had calculated everything to control not only my wealth but my emotions, my pride, and my life. I called Baba Akin. We need eyes everywhere, I said. Every move Aminra makes, every call, every visitor. I need the full picture before the wedding. No mistakes. Understood, Kamal, he replied. We'll move quickly and quietly. I hung up and looked at my reflection in the office window. The man staring back at me was calm, composed, but inside a storm raged. Rage, fear, betrayal. And yet, beneath it all, clarity. I knew what I had to do. The first step was to confirm the scope of Aminra's plan. I had already gathered evidence, but I needed proof that was undeniable. Something that would expose her and Tund completely, leaving no room for manipulation or deception. I reviewed the surveillance footage again. There she was, smiling, laughing, moving with a grace that had once captivated me. And yet, every movement was tainted by duplicity. She was playing a part, performing a role with meticulous precision. I remembered the recordings, the messages, the financial documents. The realization settled heavily in my chest. She had been planning this long before I had even met her. I couldn't confront her blindly. Not now. I needed leverage. I needed strategy. The day passed in a blur of meetings, phone calls, and subtle observation. I maintained the appearance of normalcy for the sake of my family, my staff, and the wedding preparations. They believed I was focused, calm, and in control. What they didn't know was that inside I was calculating every possible scenario, mapping every outcome. By evening, I received a call from the unknown informant. Kamal, the voice said, low and urgent, there's something you must see tonight. It will clarify everything about Aminra's motives and Tund's role. But be careful. They suspect you're watching. I nodded to myself. I had expected this. Every move I made had to be deliberate. I couldn't allow them to see fear, suspicion, or doubt. The rendezvous point was in a secluded warehouse on the outskirts of Lagos. I drove carefully, keeping my headlights low, my senses alert. The city was quiet, the streets empty, a perfect stage for secrets to emerge. Inside, the informant handed me a folder thicker than the ones before. Everything you've seen so far is just the surface, he said. This will show you the full depth. Aminra's past, her connections, the role Tund plays. Once you see this, you'll understand why they planned everything this way. I opened it carefully. Documents, photographs, recorded conversations, even emails with her co-conspirators, all meticulously organized. I scanned through, my stomach twisting with each revelation. Aminra had connections I had never imagined, dealings that extended beyond personal manipulation. Tund was more than a participant. He was an enabler, a strategist, a partner in a scheme that had targeted me from the beginning. And then I saw the most damning evidence, a document labeled Wedding Day Contingency Plan. Every moment of the ceremony, every guest interaction, every distraction, and every move I would make had been predicted. They had accounted for my emotional reactions, my decision-making patterns, even the influence of my family and friends. It was chilling. I felt rage boil inside me, but I controlled it. This wasn't the time for blind fury. This was the time for precision, strategy, and calculated action. I left the warehouse with a clear plan forming in my mind. I would not confront Aminra publicly, not yet. I would wait for the right moment, ensuring that every move she made, every lie she told, would be exposed beyond doubt. Back at my apartment, I began organizing the evidence, arranging it in a way that would allow me to present it decisively. I also reviewed the timeline. 3 days to the wedding, each day a critical window to uncover more, confirm suspicions, and ensure my safety. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed every memory, every gesture, every word Aminra had spoken. Every laugh, every touch, every promise, it had all been calculated, rehearsed, performed. The woman I had loved with my whole heart had been a stranger all along. I realized something else, I still loved her. Despite the betrayal, the manipulation, the lies, a part of me clung to the hope that there might be an explanation, that there might be some shred of truth beneath the deception. But rationally, I knew it was unlikely. The next morning, I began discreetly monitoring Aminra and Tund. Every phone call, every message, every visitor was scrutinized. The wedding preparations continued around me, oblivious to the tension simmering beneath the surface. Flowers were arranged, tables set, invitations confirmed, all while I prepared for the confrontation that would come. By evening, I received another message from the unknown informant. Kamal, tonight. Location, the rooftop. I have the final piece. It will show you everything before the wedding. Be ready. I felt a cold shiver run through me. The final piece. Everything was leading to this moment. I arrived at the rooftop under cover of night. Legos stretched below me, a tapestry of lights and shadows. The informant stepped from the shadows, handing me a tablet. This, he said, contains the recordings that confirm everything. Aminra's intentions, Tund's involvement, and the plan for your wedding day. Watch carefully. Once you see this, there's no turning back. I pressed play. The first frame made my blood run cold. Aminra speaking to Tund and another figure I didn't recognize, laying out the exact timing of every event, every deception, every move designed to manipulate me emotionally and financially. I sank against the wall, gripping the tablet. The depth of the betrayal was staggering. They had thought of everything, every contingency, every potential obstacle. And yet, they had underestimated me. I realized then that I had a choice. I could confront them immediately, risking chaos and exposure, or I could wait, gather undeniable evidence, and strike when it mattered most. I chose the latter. As I descended from the rooftop, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Rage was still there, burning, but it was tempered by strategy. I had the truth. I had the evidence. I had the plan. And now it was a matter of execution. 3 days to the wedding. 3 days to uncover the full scope of the betrayal. 3 days to prepare for the confrontation that would decide everything. And as I looked out over the city, I realized that by the time the wedding day arrived, nothing would ever be the same. That night, as I prepared for bed, a notification appeared on my phone. It was a video. My hands shook as I opened it. Aminra, smiling at the camera, holding a small box. The message read, Kamal, by the time you see this, the choice will be yours, but the consequences will be forever. The morning of the wedding arrived with an intensity one had never experienced before. Lagos was alive, vibrant, indifferent to the storm raging inside me. The city carried on as if nothing mattered, as if life itself had no memory of betrayal, manipulation, or deceit. And yet, for me, every second was taut with tension, every movement measured, every glance sharp. I stood in my apartment, staring at my reflection in the mirror. Kamal. The man who had built everything from scratch, who had trusted blindly, who had loved completely, and who had been betrayed in the most intimate, calculated way imaginable. 3 days of investigation. 3 days of surveillance. 3 days of uncovering secrets, piecing together evidence, and preparing for the confrontation that would decide everything. And now I was here. I dressed carefully, each cufflink, tie, and fold of my suit deliberate. Not just for appearances but for control. For power. For readiness. I wasn't going to the altar today as a victim. I was going to the altar as someone who knew everything, and who held the leverage. The unknown informant had given me one final piece of evidence last night. A video showing Aminra and Tund planning their final move, laying out contingencies for every guest, every event, every reaction I might have. It was damning, undeniable proof that their smiles, their words, their apparent love had all been performance. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about survival, emotional, mental, and strategic. I had to protect myself. I had to expose them. I had to ensure the truth came out without destroying myself or my family in the process. I arrived at the venue early. The grandeur of the hall, the flowers, the decorations, the staff bustling about, it all felt surreal. Everything looked perfect. Everything looked like it should be a dream. But I knew better. Beneath the surface, danger and deceit lurked. I found a quiet corner and reviewed the evidence once more. Every document, every video, every message meticulously catalogued. Every move Aminra had planned, every lie she had told, every manipulation she had executed, it was all here. And now it would all be revealed. The guests began to arrive. Family, friends, business associates. They smiled, chatted, and carried on, oblivious to the storm about to break. I watched them, keeping my focus, keeping my calm. Then I saw her. Aminra. Stunning, radiant, perfect in every way a bride could be. She smiled at everyone, laughing, waving, her eyes sparkling. And yet I could see through it all. I could see the mask. I could see the calculation behind every gesture. My heart twisted. Part of me still wanted to reach for her, to believe in the woman I had loved. But the rational part, the Kamal who had been betrayed, studied, manipulated, held me back. Tund was nearby, laughing with guests, every bit the charming confidant. My so-called best friend, the man who had conspired against me from the shadows. My stomach churned. I knew it was time. I waited for the precise moment. The ceremony began. Guests were seated. The music swelled. And then, as Aminra prepared to walk down the aisle, I made my move. "Excuse me," I said softly to the master of ceremonies, guiding him aside. "I need a moment." He nodded, and I slipped away, heading toward the private lounge where Aminra had been preparing. I held the tablet in my hand, loaded with all the evidence, ready to confront her. I found her alone, adjusting her veil, radiant and calm. She turned and smiled when she saw me. "Kamal," she said softly, "everything's ready. Are you nervous?" I didn't answer. Instead, I placed the tablet on the table and opened it. The videos, documents, messages, all visible, all undeniable. I watched her face as the first video played. Her smile faltered, but she quickly masked it. I don't know what this is," she said, her voice steady but with a slight tremor. I stepped closer, voice low but firm. "Don't lie to me, Aminra. I've seen everything. The meetings, the messages, the financials, the planning. You and Tund, you've been orchestrating this betrayal from the beginning." Her eyes widened slightly. Then calm returned. "Kamal, you're overreacting. I can explain." "Explain?" I laughed bitterly. "Explain the months of manipulation? Explain the lies, the planning, the games? Explain the way you pretended to love me while scheming behind my back?" She stepped back slightly, her calm smile faltering. "Kamal, please, don't make assumptions. It's not what you think." I shook my head. "Not what I think. Aminra, I have evidence. Every word, every meeting, every transaction. You and Tund, everything is here." I gestured to the tablet. "You can't deny it." For a moment, silence. The kind of silence that presses against your chest, heavy, suffocating. Then she spoke, her voice low and deliberate. "Kamal, maybe you're right. Maybe I've made mistakes. But you don't understand. There are things you don't know. Reasons for everything I've done." I felt my pulse spike. Reasons? What reason justifies betrayal, manipulation, and lying to the person you claim to love? She looked at me, eyes softening, a hint of desperation there. I wanted security. I wanted protection. I was afraid. Afraid? I repeated, incredulous. Afraid? Afraid of what? That I wouldn't love you? That I wouldn't trust you? You turned our love into a game, Aminra. And you involved Tund, my best friend, in your schemes. Her gaze flickered to the tablet. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I didn't want this. I didn't want to hurt you. I felt a cold fury rise inside me. And yet here we are. Hurt beyond repair. Deceived beyond comprehension. And the wedding? You planned every detail to manipulate me until the final day. Her lips trembled, but she remained silent. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I trusted you. I loved you. And you betrayed me. The room seemed to shrink around us, the weight of the confrontation pressing down. I knew the choice I faced. I could confront her publicly, expose the betrayal now, destroy everything she had built, and shatter the wedding. Or I could wait, gather every last piece of evidence, and ensure the exposure was undeniable, calculated, complete. But the clock was ticking. Every second brought the wedding closer, every heartbeat a reminder that the world expected joy, celebration, and love. I made my decision. I need time, I said finally. Time to think, to plan, to decide what to do next. You've made this impossible. Her eyes widened. Kamal, please, don't do this. Not today. Not now. I can't, I said firmly. Not after everything I've discovered. Not after everything you've done. She reached out, trembling. Kamal? I stepped back, holding up my hand. Don't touch me. Not until I know what you're capable of. Not until I can see the truth without being deceived further. For a long moment we stood in silence. The weight of everything, love, betrayal, trust, lies, hung between us like a tangible force. And then my phone buzzed. I glanced at it, heart skipping a beat. Another message from the unknown informant. I opened it. My stomach dropped. A single line. The final move has begun. Be ready, Kamal. By the wedding, everything will change forever. I looked at Aminra, who was watching me, fear and uncertainty in her eyes. I realized then that the choice I faced was not just about love or betrayal, it was about survival, strategy, and consequences. The wedding was still hours away. Guests would arrive, the ceremony would begin, and the world would expect celebration. But I knew better. I knew the storm was about to hit. And I knew that when it did, nothing would ever be the same. I pocketed my phone, took a deep breath, and stepped back. Aminra's eyes followed me, wide and unblinking. The final day, the wedding day, was about to become the battlefield. And I realized with a cold certainty that by the time the ceremony began, Kamal would either emerge victorious or destroyed. But one thing was certain. I would not go down without uncovering every secret, exposing every lie, and making sure that betrayal paid its price. The doors to the wedding hall opened behind me, the sounds of music, laughter, and celebration spilling out. And as I stepped toward the crowd, my heart pounding, I knew one undeniable truth. The countdown had begun, and the world would never be the same.